Ladies and gentlemen, yet again, you have to turn to Debate Me channel to tell you something that no one else will. Joe Biden should not drop out of the race. I do not like Joe Biden. I think he should not be president, just like Donald Trump should not be president. I think he's a corrupt liar and a fraud. I think he's too old, just like Trump is too old, right? Who else does not like Joe Biden as much as I do and will tell you the truth that he should not drop out? Why am I saying he should not drop out? Because of a truth that no one else is telling you, right? The left-wing media folks are telling you that any generic Democrat would do better than Joe Biden. But I want you to pay close attention. Everyone who tells you that, notice they don't give you any sort of facts or evidence to back up that claim. And also notice that even I fell for it, right? When I was just listening to them and taking their words and going with my feelings, I was like, yeah, it made sense to me that Joe Biden, as unpopular as he is, right? And I knew how corrupt the Democratic Party is, and they're trying to, shove him down our throats and rigging the primary. And I'm like, we got better options, man. And I looked at somebody like Newsom, who I don't like either. Slickback Newsom. I said, man, but look at how he debates, man. He's younger, he's strong, and he's got all the buzzwords, and he can, list out all the accomplishments, right? Unlike Joe Biden, who struggles to brag about the things that he has actually done. So I said, yeah, man. But then they kept saying this. They kept saying that any generic Democrat, not giving any sources, not giving any facts. So I looked into it. Every single poll, Newsom versus Trump, Whitmer versus Trump, whoever else. Who else you want? Cenk versus Trump? You want Marianne Williamson versus Trump? Every single other Democrat trails Donald Trump. Joe Biden does the best against Donald Trump versus any other candidate. That's a fact of the matter. And I want you to, again, notice that whoever's telling you that Joe Biden should drop out and claiming that any generic Democrat will do better, I want you to notice that none of them give you any source of data that supports that. Again, it seems to make sense, right? Look at Joe Biden, man. He's struggling. He's old. He's not popular. You would think these other candidates would do better, right? But as Mr. Propagandist Ben Shapiro would say, facts over feelings, right? What is the evidence to support this claim, right? The way to know how other candidates would do versus Trump is to look at polls, right? Polls are not 100%. They are a snapshot in time. However, for you to make a claim that other candidates would do better with no evidence whatsoever, you're just simply saying it. And then notice how they say stuff like any generic Democrat. What is that based on? Like, you just say stuff? I could say stuff too. There's no other Republican that would do better than Cruz if, Cruz was to run against Joe Biden or any Democrat. Right? Now, you would challenge that because what's my evidence? I'm just saying stuff. Right? So that's number one. The idea that any random Democrat would do better than Joe Biden is not based in reality, is not based in fact, it's based in feelings. Now, that being said, because I noticed that CNN, ironically, was one of the first people to actually mention this fact. This is what inspired this video. I just watched the video today that they posted, and they mentioned that, these other candidates do not do better than Joe Biden. And they didn't even go that far. They showed a poll that shows that them versus Trump is winning by 4 to 5 points. What they did not do is they did not compare Joe Biden's performance versus these candidates. So we know that the polls don't indicate that they would beat Trump, but they didn't clarify the detail of whether, okay, so they can't beat Trump, but do they at least do better than Biden? Now, when I looked at the polls, the answer was no. So not only are they losing to Trump, according to the polls, they are trailing Biden, right? Joe Biden did the best against Donald Trump in the polls, according to the polls, right? So CNN kind of gets you a little bit in the territory I mentioned this, but again, they don't compare these people to how Biden would do. And then here's the other detail. And ironically, the host did kind of mention this, right? But for them to go on the show and talk about this stuff and not go to this level, a little bit of a amateur hour, shall we say? So if you're going to have this conversation, especially as a major news organization like CNN, who has access to so many tools and resources, and you're not going to evaluate what the current polls say, that's malpractice, right? So CNN is telling a story that I've been saying for a while now, right? Welcome aboard, CNN. I've been saying this for a minute. that the polls does not support the idea of swapping out Joe Biden. And that's just the beginning of it. When you look at the whole political process and how it works and the delegates and what switching him out would involve, man, oh man. And also, if you do that and it doesn't work out, it's not like you can just switch back to Joe Biden. So when you consider the disastrous reality of swapping out Joe Biden right now, and then you add to that what the polls were saying, I mean, it's not really sounding like a nice idea. You would like it to sound like a nice idea. Maybe that's why the left-wing media is putting it to the audience, because it feels good. Yeah, these dumb Democrats want to just get rid of Joe Biden. You know, they're so dumb, these Democrats, right? Feelings, man. You feel the Democrats are doing stuff. You feel they should switch out Joe Biden. But where are the facts, where the evidence? But I'm going to take it to the next level, go beyond what CNN did. Again, CNN trailing me on this point. And here's where we should be at right now. We had a real news media in this country, independent, mainstream media, whatever, left-wing, right-wing. If we had real media, then the conversation would be, number one, we got to see an update on those polls, right? We need to see currently polls on all the potential candidates versus Trump, right? All the potential candidates versus Trump. Now, CNN has the power. First of all, I don't know if those polls exist. If they are there, CNN could find them and report on them and let us know. If they aren't there, CNN has the power to inspire the pollsters to actually do the poll if it doesn't exist. And worst case scenario, CNN has the capacity to do the poll themselves, right? There's no excuse for this. There's no excuse for CNN to not be able to provide an updated poll on all these candidates versus Joe Biden. Because again, I'm going to be the only one to tell you guys this. The current reality where we are right now is we need to know how these other candidates do versus Donald Trump, because post the debate performance, things might have changed, right? The thing that the left-wing media wanted to wish into existence might actually be true now. It might actually be the case that any generic Democrat might do better than Joe Biden post-debate. That wasn't the case before. The polls did not suggest that. And also, again, whoever's saying that, notice they never give you any facts or evidence. They just simply said it, pulled it out of thin air. Actually, that statement that has been repeated many times by the Young Turks is absolutely so absurd and so not disconnected from reality that even if the polls on the alternatives to Biden have surged, leading Biden to trail the top contenders, the top alternatives, there's no way that even now that statement could be true. Think about that. Any generic Democrat will do better than Joe Biden. That just can't be the case, right? Think about it. You're saying that even a Democrat that almost nobody knows, that doesn't have the best record, is going to do better than Joe Biden? That's not going to be the case, man. That's not going to be the case. The reality is, right now, best case scenario, the top 2 or maybe 3 alternatives might lead Joe Biden by a few points. I mean, I'd be shocked if even the top alternative can lead Joe Biden by 10 points. But the idea that, just think about this logically. Let's pick a list of 10 generic Democrats. The idea that the people at the bottom of that list, right, the people that do the worst on that list would still be doing better than Joe Biden, that's absurd. No way. There's no way. There is no way that would be the case. I can't see any reality where any generic Democrat does better than Joe Biden. In the real world, the best case scenario would be that the top choices or the top generic Democrats would do better than Joe Biden. Or maybe you say any of the top generic Democrats will do better than Joe Biden. Like that I could see making sense, right? But there's no way that Joe Biden is going to do worse than the worst of the top generic Democrats, right? That's just not happening, man. I mean, we saw these other people trying to run against Joe Biden, and we saw what the polls showed, right? Most of them, they were trailing Joe Biden by a significant margin, right? So those are facts, right? And they conflict with that statement, that idea of any generic Democrat doing better. I don't think that would ever be the case. Post-debate, pre-debate, nah. But post-debate, obviously Joe Biden took a big hit. CNN's own poll they were looking at, they were showing a 10% drop in confidence in Joe Biden. So if there's a 10% drop in confidence in Joe Biden, now the polls prior to the debate, in terms of other candidates versus Trump, showed that the best alternatives were slightly behind Joe Biden. So they weren't that far behind Joe Biden, right? So if Joe Biden took a 10% hit based on confidence in terms of mental capacity, whatever, if even half of that percentage drop occurred in terms of the, versus Trump polls, that would mean that the top alternatives are now doing better than Joe Biden. However, if the movement is similar to the movement in terms of, the 10% drop in terms of people thinking that he has a capacity to be president, if it's similar to that amount in terms of that was just a 10% drop, it's pretty big, but it's not like a 20% drop or something, then that would mean that things would still be very, very close. So that would mean, it would be something like Joe Biden versus Trump. Trump leads by, I don't know, 3 points or something. I'm throwing a random number. And then if it's Newsom versus Trump, Trump leads by 2 points, right? I mean, based on this, if you follow a similar pattern, 10% drop based on cognitive, how people feel about Joe Biden cognitively. If that kind of movement happens regarding how people feel with other candidates versus Trump and Joe Biden versus Trump, then that would mean that it's not going to be a major move, which means it's almost like a non-movement, right? If you're doing 1 point better than Biden versus Trump, I mean, I don't know if that's worth all the risk of swapping him out at this point, right? Again, just living in a world of reality. I would love the idea that we could swap him out and get a better candidate who can win and also can do a better job. But I don't see it, man. I'm just basing on reality and facts and what we have. And I don't have any evidence to support that would be, a realistic outcome. So ultimately, we need to know what the numbers are now. But unfortunately, if I'm to extrapolate what the numbers would indicate right now, best case scenario, I think the best alternatives to Joe Biden right now probably have a 2 to 3 point lead at the most for many, many reasons. And if these left-wing media organizations were, real media organizations and, if they had anything, this will be the discussing in detail why that is. Why is it that as bad as Joe Biden is doing, that Newsom, for example, either trails Biden or he only leads by 1 or 2 points? It seems to defy reality. And here's the reality. Maybe there's an issue with the polls, right? Maybe there's an issue with the polls. We've seen many issues with polls before, but the fact that people aren't even discussing the polls, the fact that people are making assertions without any evidence, right? So if there's an issue with the polls, first of all, everyone should be discussing the polls, right? Because you should have some evidence to back up your claims, right? And then you dive deeper and say, according to the polls, Biden's our best option. But we challenge that because we're going to look at the polls, and you look at the polls and you see there's a problem with who did the polls and how they did the polls. And then you say, we're basing this based on X, Y, and Z. We know the polls don't align with what we're saying, but we see that the polls might be wrong because of the sample sizes. There's something, but they're not even discussing it. They're just simply throwing it out there. Any generic Democrat will do better than it. Based on what, son? I would love to see Joe Biden swapped out for somebody else, but I don't have any data to support that that's a good idea. And the people suggesting it don't have any data to support that that's a good idea. And notice that whenever they say this, they're not mentioning who the alternative should be, right? Notice how all the people saying they should get rid of Joe Biden, they are not giving you an alternative, right? They're acting like the right wing when they complain about stuff and they don't have solutions. All they know is whatever you're doing is wrong and it's indoctrinating the kids, right? But what's the solution? No solutions. Oh, we should get rid of Joe Biden and replace him. Replace him with who? What are you basing that we should replace him? And who should we replace him with? They don't say that. That's not it, man. This is the Debate Me channel. Debate me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well.